بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. Welcome to what is the beginning of a long and inshallah exciting and I hope and I pray very fruitful journey as we read through the entirety of one of the great books of the Shafi'i madhab, the Matn of Abi Shuja' radiallahu anhu. I would like in this first lecture to lay out a little bit about the author in the book and also the approach that we're going to take in the class. So hopefully this first lecture will be a sort of reminder or introduction that you can always go back to if you find yourself way along in the classes and you're sort of, well, I don't understand why is he doing this or doing that. You can go back and this is hopefully where I'm going to explain what we are going to talk about. Hopefully you have some background to the history of the madhab of Imam Shafi'i. Hopefully even more than that, you've taken the course on the introduction to the Shafi'i madhab, which will be important to understand a lot of the things that I'm about to say. As we know, the main book of study of the Shafi'i madhab is the Minhaj of Imam al-Nawawi. It is a book that has redacted and taken care of any discrepancies that happened before the time of Imam al-Nawawi, which means reconciling a lot of the old and new opinions of Imam al-Shafi'i, combining both the Khurasani and the Iraqi strands of the madhab, and also having the benefit of already seeing the works of Imam al-Rafi'i, rahimahullah, because Imam al-Nawawi, rahimahullah, came after Imam al-Rafi'i, so he had the benefit of also having the work of the great work of Imam al-Rafi'i, and therefore handling it. So when we talk about teaching the madhab, when we talk about what does the Shafi'i madhab say about A, B, or C, we're always going to go back to the Minhaj of Imam al-Nawawi and we're going to read one of the commentaries or one of the many commentaries or meta-commentaries, Hawashi, on that book. So you might be asking, why am I saying that if we're not going to read the Minhaj? Well, the Minhaj is considered a large book. It's considered a heavy book. It's maybe that's the wrong word. It's a detail-oriented book. So that is not the book that we start out with. That is the book that we are going towards. That is the model of instruction that we are going towards. But there are other books that have been used in the Shafi'i madhab that are either summaries of that book, like the Manhaj of Shaykh al-Islam Zakaria al-Ansari, who had his own commentary on that, his own summary. Plus there's the Hashi of al-Jamal, that's one track that you can take. There's also Umdat al-Salik, which is actually another form of a summary of the Minhaj, which we will cover at some point, inshallah, together. But again, those are not introductory books. We need something to start us off in the journey. And oddly enough, the book that we are going to read by Abi Shuja' radiallahu anhu, who died in the year 500, by the way, of the Hijrah, according to the most authentic historical evidence, is a book that's before all of that. Before the Tanqiyah, before Rafi'i and al-Nawawi, way before Ramli and al-Haytami, so on and so forth. So the question is, why are we reading a book that's so back? MashaAllah, this book has a lot of tawfiq and barakah, largely because Abi Shuja' himself, radiallahu anhu, was a man who had a lot of barakah. He was a judge, a jurist and judge who dedicated some 40 some plus years of his life to that trade, the craft and the trade of being a judge, and he was a jurist of the Shafi'i madhab. There are some confusion in the biographical literature about Abi Shuja', and you will find that Imam al-Bayjuri and others themselves will say that he lived till he was 160 years old and he died in Medina. And it seems that there's an article written by a Iraqi, modern day Iraqi scholar who resides in the Emirates, Abdul Hakim al-Anis, may Allah protect him, who I'm very blessed to have met and taken ijazah from. And he has a very short article about Abi Shuja' himself, and he went through a lot of it's a short article, and he went through a lot of the biographical details, and he said, actually, the man, the Abi Shuja' that people think lived till 160 years old, etc., it's another guy. And that was in Medina, and so on and so forth. So most likely, our Abi Shuja' died in the year 500, and nonetheless, he was a very pious and Mubarak person. What's interesting about him is that he is from the age of the Salaf, And Abu Tahir as-Silafi, who was one of the hadith authors, in his Mu'jam, he has a hadith that he narrates through Abi Shuja back to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he is considered one of the Salaf, a reliable transmitter, a reliable person with reliable memory, and you can find that hadith in a Salafi's book. Okay, and so a train of transmission going back to Abi Shuja is established, and Abi Shuja back to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam is established. Now, as I said, this is a Mubarak book because it has dozens and dozens of commentaries and meta commentaries. And one of the things that we'll even when we get to the introduction in the next lecture, we will see that one of the benefits of the book is that Abi Shuja radiallahu anhu has many headings and subheadings, and everything is enumerated in an easy way. So the book, he wrote the book, as he will say, for the purposes of teaching, beginners, for the purposes of making the structure of Shafi'i fiqh easy to memorize, which is why Al-Amriti will put it to verse form, and when he puts it to verse form, it even becomes even easier to memorize. Usually the versification is not studied, it's usually the text as we are going to study it now, and the verse form only really works in the Arabic language anyway. So alhamdulillah, we are grateful that we have a very competent English translation of the book, and that's what we are going to read. Now, I mentioned the beginning. This is a book for beginners. So I want to talk a little bit about what are the ranks of study in the Shafi'i madhab so that people understand what we're doing and why we're doing. So a beginner is in the madhab, or a beginning student is described as somebody who cannot even conceptualize the legal issues. So if you don't know that if a man tells his wife, "You are to me like the back of my mother," that is called al-dhihar. It's mentioned in the Quran, and there's a specific legal expiation for it. I mean, if I'm saying this and you have, what are you even talking about? I mean, khalas, you're a beginner. There's no shame in that. We all have to start somewhere. I mean, I mentioned probably what is a very obscure part of Islamic law. Okay, I get that. But I'm just showing you that Islamic law is much more than just making wudu and praying, even those are the first two sections. There are many other things in Islamic law. So if those legal concepts don't even come to register, khalas, that means you're in a beginning. The intermediate student is this person who is able to understand and conceptualize those legal issues, but is not able to provide a dalil for it. I know in the Shafi'i madhab that in this situation you do this. And then the follow-up question is why? Yani, meaning what is the dalil that the madhab uses? I don't know. The khalas, you're just muqallid, you are following. That means you're intermediate. The advanced student is the person that can conceptualize the legal issues in addition to citing the dalil, the proof text from the Quran and the Sunnah, or ijma' or qiyas or whatever for that legal issue. But it doesn't end there. We have other levels. The next level is what we call mujtahid al-fatwa. Mujtahid al-fatwa. They are people like An-Nawawi and Ar-Rafi'i who are able to derive rulings from the usul laid out by the Imam and choose which of the multiple positions in the madhab are correct. That's what An-Nawawi and Ar-Rafi'i did. So they understood the usul, they understood the legal issues, they understood the dalil of the legal issues, they understood how it was arrived, what the ijtihad equation used was, plus they'll say, okay, there are multiple opinions in the madhab, but this is the correct one. This is the rajah, this is the most correct one. After that, you have, so that's mujtahid al-fatwa, then you have mujtahid al-madhab. The mujtahid al-madhab is the person that understands the usul laid down by the Imam, i.e. Imam al-Shafi'i radiallahu anhu, and can use that usul to derive rulings from the source text. And then the person that is looking straight at the Quran and Sunnah and engaging in their own ijtihad, not just the ijtihad of their madhab, but other tools of ijtihad, this is al-ijtihad al-mutlaq. So we go all the way from beginning, from a studying point of view, from beginning, intermediate, advanced, and then mujtahid of fatwa, mujtahid of madhab, mujtahid of mutlaq. But yet there is another type of ijtihad that no longer exists, which is al-mujtahid al-muqannin, is the mujtahid al-muassis, is the mujtahid that makes the rules of usul themselves. The reason I mention this is, as I said in other lectures that you heard, hopefully you remember me saying this, is that one of the gross, it's really almost like a lie that's been perpetuated in different circles of learning, unfortunately even by Muslim jurists themselves, is that the gates of ijtihad were closed at some point, some mysterious time in the middle of Islam's history, and that's the cause of our downfall. This comes from an incorrect understanding by a Dutch Orientalist, Christian Hernioni Snook, in his reading and translation of Imam al-Bayjuri's Hashia on the commentary of Ibn Qasim al-Ghazi on the Matn of Abi Shuja', which is, as I'll say shortly, basically the Hashia that I'm using as I prepare our discussion and teaching the course, teaching the text. Because that type of ijtihad that establishes the rules, that establishes the tools, that type of ijtihad no longer exists because all of the potential tools have already been used by all of the imams before us. So you can't do what a Shafi'i or Malik or Abu Hanifa or Al-Awza'i or Layth, etc., radiallahu anhu, you can't do what they did, which is establish rules. You can't say, oh, there's a new tool of ijtihad. Like Imam Malik has this unique thing, Amal Ahlul Medina, the acts of the people of Medina. Imam Abu Hanifa talks a lot about istihsan, that the Shafi'is criticize, but then the Hanafis say, well, you don't really understand us. The Zahiris, which really don't necessarily, are not always considered in this family of jurists, but let's just for the sake of argument, they deny the use of qiyas. You can't do that. There are no combinations of tools. They've all been exhausted. But you can be a mujtahid mutlaq. You can be the mujtahid that goes straight using those existing tools and going to the Quran and Sunnah and making ijtihad. But you can't open the toolbox and look at the tools and be like, you know what, I have a new tool that I'm going to put together. That doesn't exist. And so when somebody like al-Bayjuri in the Hashiyah says that, the Miskeen, this Orientalist, he didn't understand that. So he started perpetuating this thing of there is no ijtihad, that even the Muslims say that there's no ijtihad anymore. And nothing can be further from the truth. So I just wanted to use the term beginner just to give you this little sort of detour as we come back. Okay. So forget about ijtihad right now and all of these lofty things. Let us come back to earth. We are all beginners together. And inshallah we're going to read this text. Usually the Matn of Abi Shuja' is taught with its very basic commentary by Ibn Qasim al-Ghazi, rahimahullah, who died in the year 918. He's from Gaza. May Allah Ta'ala alleviate the suffering of our brothers and sisters in Gaza and the West Bank. And Ibn Qasim al-Ghazi, it's like, Abu Shuja' will say like 2 words, and then Ibn Qasim will write like a sentence. So every 2 words he writes as a sentence. So the commentary of Ibn Qasim is usually the first thing that you read. Or if you're reading the text of the Matn of Abi Shuja', it will be the second thing that you read. But really, it is itself considered a text. It's such a basic commentary that you can almost think of them as meshed together as one text. Now, unfortunately, what we have translated is just the Matn of Abi Shuja'. So what we are going to do in the class, and sorry, by the way, and then there's the Hashia of Imam al-Bayjuri, Shaykh al-Islam Imam al-Bayjuri, who died in the year 1276. He was Shaykh al-Azhar. His Hashia, his meta-commentary, is directly on the commentary of Ibn Qasim on the Matn of Abi Shuja'. This is the text that I study. It is considered one of, if not the last book written of, let's say, the classical way of the Hawashi. So Imam al-Bayjuri, 1276 of the Hijrah is like the 1820s, so relatively recent in the case of human history. So he talked about a lot of things that are not too far away from our life, even though life has advanced greatly from a technological point of view. That's true. But his ibara, his commentary is very simple. And Imam al-Bayjuri himself, he was Shaykh al-Azhar. If you're not a Shafi'i, you still know the name Imam al-Bayjuri because he wrote the famous commentary on Jawharat al-Tawheed in Ilm al-Aqidah or Usul al-Din, which is till today is one of the standard texts that we teach at Al-Azhar. We teach the Hashiyah of Imam al-Bayjuri. Imam al-Bayjuri was also a Sufi. He was a Naqshbandi, I believe. And he was also Lughawi. He was also well versed in the sciences of the language. He was also logician, so he was well versed and he wrote about all of these things. So in his Hashiyah, as I discussed in the other lectures on the introduction to the Shafi'i Madhab, towards the end, the Hashiyas, they bring in from all of these different sciences and all of these different disciplines. And what I want to impress upon you is that that's how we will try our best, inshallah, to study like that. So it might seem like we're going slow. It might seem like we're reading a sentence in the text, but then we're diverting here and there. But don't think it's a diversion, because along the way we are picking up tools of interpretation, tools of understanding. We are not simply just wasting our time speaking for the sake of speaking, but rather we are using all of the different sciences of Islam to help us understand the text, which ultimately is a text of furu'a. Of course, we understand that, but we will also we will have discussions of language, we will have discussions of logic, we will have discussions of philosophy, we will have discussions of usul al-fiqh, we will have discussions of fiqh itself. We will talk about al-khilaf or the differences between other opinions, so on and so forth. Okay, so just so you know where I'm coming from, I will be basically preparing the classes from the Hashiyah of al-Bayjuri. Now, that being said, the way I would like the class to be structured is that inshallah we will read in Arabic the text of Abi Shuja'. So you get used to hearing the Arabic, you get used to hearing the mustalahat, the technical terms that are used in the madhab. Some of the words are specific to the madhab, but some of the words, of course, are just based on the Quran and based on general fiqh understanding that transverse all the different madhab. So I will read the text in Arabic, and then we will read its direct translation in English so that we can associate in our minds the text in Arabic and the text in English. That will be the first thing that we do. The next thing that we are going to do is that we are going to use, I have a couple of sources with me, I'm going to give you sort of rapid fire the quick dalil from the Quran and Sunnah that the Shafi'is use for these opinions. So with the exception of today and the next maybe lecture or two where we're going to be dissecting the author's introduction, once we get into the fiqh itself, so there are X number types of water, and I mean this is the first section, water from the rain, so we want to know what the dalil is. Now usually when I gave you the demarcation of the beginner, intermediate and advanced student, the dalil comes much later. However, I think, having gone through this myself, you're taking this course in the English language, you're exposed to probably, the English-speaking Muslim community, which is crazy and all over the place, to be honest. It's very important that you start in your mind. I want from the very beginning in your mind to understand that every single sentence that we are going to read in this entire book, all of the sections of fiqh, all of them have a dalil in the Quran and Sunnah. They're our dalil, or the dalil of Sayyidina Imam Shafi'i radiallahu anhu and the imams of our madhab. That doesn't mean that there are not other dalils or other ways of interpreting those dalils, but I want to make this association. And I just want to give you a story. I was teaching this text, Ibadat. I was teaching Ibadat several years ago. This was before COVID. And there was a young student, I think of Yemeni background. So, Yemenis are Shafi'is, either Zaydi or Shafi'i. He's a Sunni, he's a Shafi'i. And I can't remember what section. I think we were in the section of Salah. Something, benign like that. And almost everything that I was saying, he's like, well, what's the dalil? What's the dalil? So usually when I teach, you can't see it now, but I usually have several books with me. Because that's how I was taught. You don't. It's not just one book. I mean, there's one central book, but you have to have a library around you, which is why I teach and I do the recordings in the library. So if I have to grab something, it's there. But I like to have them, spread out. So I happen to have a book, with me of the adillah. And when I started narrating for him some of the dalil, I could see that he was very. It's like there was a confusion, and then he was like, "Alhamdulillah, okay, there's a dalil. There's something. He's not just making this up." So I realized that people come to the class and come to the subject matter from different backgrounds, and we carry different sets of baggage. And I want to respect and I want to honor that. When I studied, I didn't study like that. I studied Ibn Qasim straight on a Matn of Abi Shuja from front to end. It took me a few months, finished it with a teacher, and I moved on. And I was fine with that. I didn't have, alhamdulillah, problem. This is what the book says, this is what the book said, this is the opinion, this is the opinion. But I realized that other people are not like that. So I think that this is a good exercise for me, and I think it's a good exercise for you, because inshallah you're going to take this knowledge and you're going to go out and do great things in the world, and you have your own families and your own community. كلكم راع وكلكم مسؤول عن رعيته. The Prophet ﷺ said, as narrated in Bukhari, all of you are shepherds and responsible for your flock. So whoever your flock is that you're responsible for, you want to also be able to provide this service for you. So we're going to read the text in Arabic, then in its entirety. That's like I have slices for each lecture, let's say, and then we're going to read it entirety in English without any commentary. And then we're going to go back, and then the third thing we're going to do is I'm going to give you some rapid fire dalil. There's this hadith in Dawood, there's this hadith in Tirmidhi, there's this hadith here, there's this verse. We're not going to discuss the dalil. I'm not going to narrate the chain of transmission of the hadith and criticize. That's way advanced stuff. But you will have associated in your mind that each step there's a dalil linked with each sentence that we're saying. I will read the dalil in Arabic most likely, and then give you a simple translation in English. Sometimes there will be multiple dalil, sometimes there will be few dalil. Sometimes you'll understand the dalil. Sometimes I will cite the dalil and it won't make any sense. How is this the proof text for this? In which case I will try to make the link, the illah, the reason there's a link, clear. That's the third thing that we're going to do. And then the fourth thing that we're going to do is we're going to go over the text in English, and we're going to unpack it by giving you a lot of the jewels from the commentaries that we find, inshallah, in our tradition. And again, there's no flexing or there's no secrets. I'm reading from, I told you, the Hashiyah of Imam al-Bayjuri. Maybe occasionally I will look at some other commentaries if I remember there's a mas'ala somewhere else that's helpful. But that's where I'm coming from. That's what I want to do and provide for you. Hopefully that will give you a solid introduction to fiqh. Okay, so a couple of things that I want to say in the beginning is I can talk a little bit maybe about how the books are written before we get into the books, because today we're really only going to read like the first sentence of the introduction, because there's all of this beginning stuff that I need to get out of the way. So I want you to think of the text that we're going to study as concentric circles. So the metan, when I say the word metan, that means text. So the text that we're going to study, the metan that we're going to read, is called the metan of Abi Shuja. It was written by the Qadi Abi Shuja al-Asfahani radiyallahu anhu, who died, we said, in the year 500. And he wrote this book from his experience and understanding of Shafi'i fiqh. When we have that, because Abi Shuja was early, there will be many things that will be different or missing. I don't want to over-exaggerate, not many things, but there will be some things that will come up that have since been reconciled in the Shafi'i madhab because of the Qadim and Jadid opinion of Sayyidina Imam Shafi'i radiallahu anhu, for example, or some of the phraseology. So a question can be, well, why don't we go back and we edit what Imam Abi Shuja wrote and then rewrite it? That's not our way. That's not the way of Islam. We retain. We are the nation of narration, of a naql. So we will transmit it the way we received it. one circle outside, the first circle is the metn, is the sharh, is the commentary. The commentary is, in the case of the traditional book I said, is Ibn Qasim, which is not translated, but I will be like the Ibn Qasim now. I will give you basically the basic. Let me explain to you what he just said in a couple more sentences, essentially. In that commentary, we will reconcile some of those issues. So we keep the original, we don't throw it away, nor do we edit it. We keep it, and then we comment on it. And then there's a third layer, which is the meta commentary, the hashia, in which we will start to go like this. We will bring in other scenarios. We'll bring in other things. We'll say, by the way, this word, do you know what this word means? Or this sentence structure, do you know where this sentence structure comes from? That's how the books are written. And if you think in your mind, metan, sharh, hashia, then you can basically understand the rhythm of how the class is going to go. The only exception to that is that when I give you the commentary, the first level of commentary, let's say, of the text, I will do my best to give you the dalil. Because I think, as I said, for the reasons I mentioned, I think that that's important. But we're not going to spend, we're not reenacting the ijtihad of Imam al-Shafi'i. That's not the purpose of me citing the dalil. The purpose is for you to get used to hearing that there is the dalil and sort of remembering and memorizing the various adillah. Of course, in the books of the mutawalat, in the longer books of the Shafi'i madhab that hopefully you get to on your own, there are many, many other adillah and discussions that take place. So please don't confuse what I'm going to do with that full discussion. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll give you, there are some more introductory things that I wanted to say that I thought that we didn't have time for, but it looks like we will have time for them. Okay, so the other thing I would like to say is I would like to talk about the word deen, which is important because this is a class on deen, obviously fiqh, etc. But we have three interchangeable words that mean the same thing. We have the word deen, but we also have the word millah, and we also have the word sharia. And it's important that we understand that those three words, for all intents and purposes, are interchangeable. At the end of the hadith of Gabriel, when the Prophet ﷺ asked Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu, he said, "Atadri man as-sa'il?" Do you know who the questioner was? And Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu said, "Allah wa Rasuluhu a'lam." Allah and His Prophet know best. He said, "Hada Jibril ja'a yu'allimukum deenukum." He says, Gabriel, he came to teach you your deen. So deen, in that usage of the Prophet ﷺ, references back those three things, which is Islam, Iman, Ihsan, and Ashrat as-Sa'ah. Islam in that hadith is the Sharia. That's what we're studying, which is a subset of the deen. But the Sharia is also used as the deen. لِكُلٍ جَعَلْنَا شِرْعَةً وَمِنْهَاجًا. Allah Ta'ala says in the Quran, we have created a Sharia for each people, i.e. a deen, a religion. And then we also have the millah, which is, for some reason people think it's a derogatory term, but it's not, it just means religion, so on and so forth. So while we are studying a subset of the deen with a capital D, and this subset is called the Sharia also is the deen, because this is what we follow to follow Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when we come to speak, we need to make sure that we understand what our usage is. When I talk about the Sharia in these lectures, we mean specifically Islamic law along the lines of the madhab of Imam al-Shafi'i. We don't mean anything, we're not talking about Maliki fiqh or Ibadi fiqh or Zaydi fiqh. We're talking about the Shafi'i fiqh. But when I'm in public and I talk about the Sharia of Islam says, we're talking basically we mean the religion of Islam says, because the religion is the Sharia. So that's one thing that I wanted to mention to you that is important. Okay. The other thing I wanted to mention to you is Islamic law as a concept. In Islamic law, you need to keep in mind that there are two things that are happening. There is the usul, which is the interpretive tradition of Islam. The use of usul is called ijtihad. That usul and those tools, the verb is called ijtihad. To do that is to use those tools, apply them to the Quran and Sunnah, and derive from them rules. Those rules are called the furu'a. The book that we're studying now is a book of furu'a. It is a encapsulation of the results of the ijtihad of Imam Shafi'i and the Imams of the school of Imam Shafi'i using the tools of ijtihad laid out by Imam Shafi'i. It's very common for beginning and intermediate students to come to a point where they're going to study the furu'a and they're like, in a way, worshipping the furu'a. But we don't. The furu'a is a snapshot in time. We can't get to the usul until we understand the furu'a. Because this is easier for us to understand, and it's how we practice and so on and so forth. But we have to keep in our mind always that this is a result of the ijtihad. I'm not saying that everyone is going to be a mujtahid, and it's like a tawfiq thing. If you have tawfiq, then Allah opens it up for you, and so on and so forth. But that's not what I'm trying to get at. What I'm trying to get at is I want you, as you're reading this, to understand that this is a result of that usul. So we will frequently mention qawa'at fiqhiyya. We will mention rules of fiqh. We will mention usuli principles. We will talk about differences of opinion. And part of that is, well, when can we follow differences of opinion? That's all an issue, issues that are really discussed in the science of usul al-fiqh. But we want to try our best not to be so siloed in our thinking that everything is cordoned off. This is a book of furu'a. I'm not going to lie to you. We are going to learn a lot of data points. But don't ever forget that real fiqh is the usul. It's how the usul is applied to the Quran and Sunnah, and these are made sense. Which is why I will do my best to mention for you the adillah. Because I think that if you understand and you get used to hearing the different dalils moving forward, then you will understand why it is that the ijtihad produced these type of results. And then when you yourself go back to read the hadith, which is, by the way, an indispensable thing for the student of the Sharia. You have to have a wird of reading the hadith every day and do your best to read the major collections. You will understand the power of the ijtihad, and you will read the adillah in a different light. Okay. Let me see if there's something else I wanted to say. Okay. The book of Imam Abi Shuja has two names or multiple names. Sometimes it's called al-Taqrib, sometimes it's called Ghayat al-Taqsir, Ghayat al-Ikhtisar, which is why Ibn Qasim himself, he has two names for his commentary so that they rhyme with the title. And that's not unheard of, that there be multiple names for books. But we just refer to it in the circles of the Shafi'i madhab, we simply just refer to it as Matn Abi Shuja. Okay, maybe we can do his name and then we can end with that. So Imam Abu Shuja radiallahu anhu, Abu Shuja or Abi Shuja, depending on how it falls in the sentence, of course. This is his kunya, what is called his in the Arabic language. Yeah, so that's how he's known. But that's his kunya. But his name is Ahmad ibn al-Husayn ibn Ahmad al-Isfahani. Now, when you have a name Ahmad, the laqab or the title of Ahmad is usually Shamsuddin. Afwan, Shihabuddin. And when you have Muhammad, it's Shamsuddin. And when you have Ali, it's Nuruddin. So even though his name is Ahmad, like if he had a passport or a birth certificate, his given name is Ahmad, but we refer to him as Shihabul Millah Wad-Din. Shihabuddin Ahmad. So Ibn Qasim in his introduction, he introduces him that way as Shihabuddin Ahmad. So where did this Shihabuddin come from? Shihabuddin means his name is Ahmad. And this is very important because in the madhab there are two ramlis, of the second tanqiyah of the madhab. There is Shihabuddin al-Ramli, that's the older one, the father Ahmad, and then there is the younger one, Shamsuddin al-Ramli, because his name was Muhammad. So sometimes you have to understand, maybe they'll just be like Shamsuddin al-Ramli. Well, who's Shamsuddin al-Ramli? You might be like, who's that? Well, now you know where it comes from. So Abu Shuja''s name was Ahmad, so his title then would be Shihabuddin. And he is from Asfahan. Now, Asfahan is one of these weird words because it's not an Arabic word. And because it's not an Arabic word, it's actually a word that has four ways of pronouncing it. It could be Asfahan or Isfahan or Asbahan or Isbahan. So the fa and the ba in the word Isfahan or Asfahan are interchangeable because it's a non-Arabic word, and that's how it was received. So you will find many ulama from Isfahan. You'll find maybe al-Asbahani with a ba, and you might think, well, that's different, or no, it's interchangeable. So when you find an Arabic book, like the critical edition that I'm reading from, on the first alif of Asfahani, there's actually a fatha and a kasra. So when they print the book, they will write it with both the tashkil, which shows you that there are two pronunciations. Of course, when it comes to the fa, they're not going to change it, and there's no way to write the fa and the ba. That will be in the commentary and in the hashiyah. But on the tashkil itself, you will find that the word has both tashkil if the book is a critical edition. So that's important that we understand from him. And as he will go on to say in the book, that he wrote this book because he was asked to, and he tried to increase its how it's divided up in headings and subheadings, and everything is numbered to facilitate the teaching. And it is really a Mubarak book from a teaching point of view. It's one of the, actually in any subject that I've ever taught, I love this book the most because it's so easy to teach. It's like laid out. It's like instructions for the teacher laid out. You just have to go through and comment on everything. And inshallah, starting with the next lecture, we will actually begin with his introduction. I just wanted to do this lecture justice to get some housekeeping things out of the way, and then we'll start in the next lecture, inshallah, when we get into the meat of everything. Okay, I hope that this is clear. I hope my approach is clear, and I hope that this is a good resource for you. If you ever get stuck later down, why is Tariq doing this or doing that, you can come back to this lecture, inshallah, and kind of understand the rhyme and reason and the structures to the class. We'll put a pin in it here, and we'll say, Wallahu ta'ala أعلى وأعلم وصلى اللهم على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.